Hello, welcome to Blood Moon Oracle. I'm not actually coming in capacity of Blood Moon Oracle. I'm just coming to have a little discussion though. I was watching a podcast today. I hope you guys are well. Um, be a doll, like, share, comment, subscribe if you feel led, hit the bell if you feel led to do so. And so I was watching this podcast, and I think his name is DeAndre. I think I ran across him through a friend, someone that I am connected to through social media. And the talks are just fire. I think his name is DeAndre. He has I think it's Eggs and Grits or Grits and Eggs podcast or something like that. Um, just very inspirational. Definitely someone that you might want to look into. I put the clip down below so you can watch the clip that inspired this talk. And so he was talking about Black women and the medical industry, and how there's this woman that's currently um, she's in like a coma state, I believe, and they are keeping her body in place, like in an incubator state, from what I understand. And she's currently pregnant as well. And so he talked about how Black women rarely, if at all, benefit um, from the medical industry. He actually had a quote. He said, "Black women can be used on behalf of the medical industry, but rarely do Black women ever benefit from the medical industry, or Black women don't benefit from the medical industry." That's a quote. Um, but he was talking about how Black women have been experimented on for centuries, like even going back to slavery. And I forget the name of the woman, but he was talking about the woman who they're still using her uh, cells. They're still using her cells for some type of research, a Black woman. And then I can't help but remember the other woman too that's coming up here. Hottentot Venus was the name that she was given, the one that had the big giant derriere, and they would put her on display, kind of like you know, kind of like you would, put something up in a zoo for display, right? Because her body was so, uh, it was voluptuous and it was interesting to look at. And so she's coming up too. But I always am intrigued by these kinds of discussions because, number one, being a Black woman, and I've had my own experiences. And um, this particular subject, where they're keeping her body alive for, and from what it's just, I don't know how moral it is. But interestingly, me and my daughter had a discussion about this, and my daughter felt very strongly about this. And she was like, "Oh, if something like this happens to me, you better cut it off like ASAP immediately." And I was like, "But wait, I mean, before getting the full understanding of the story, I was thinking like, okay, but what if, the baby had a chance? Wouldn't that be worth allowing, the full pregnancy to come to terms?" And she was like really adamant about no, right? Now getting a little bit more of the story, understanding like what's taking place. Now I understand her position and why she felt so passionate about it. She's like, no, just cut it. Like, don't even play with me, cut it. But as I was listening to the podcast, he was talking a lot about, this is why I took such interest, because I had this conversation with my daughter about it. And he was talking about how they have turned it into kind of like a study, kind of, or like an experiment. And so I thought it would be worth coming on and kind of talking about it, because I find that a lot of us are turning to uh, healing modalities. That's why a lot of, especially Black women, are turning to self-healing modalities to kind of take on more of that responsibility to care and, doctor ourselves in ways that we can do and trust that we're getting the care that we need. I don't know if we've ever really, I know for my family, if we've ever really had a tight connection, when it comes to going to the doctor. I know my grandma was actually an RN. And so she worked in the industry and she yet still didn't have like full trust in the medical industry. And she would always talk to us too about not allowing, the doctors to go in real quick and just start removing things out of your body. And so I had an experience kind of like this too. I wanted to share where I had a situation with my womb area, and it got very serious to the point where it got very uncomfortable. And so I ended up going to see a couple of specialists. And I really didn't have the time nor the space because during this time I was kind of like living out in the country at this time. And so, you couldn't really be too choosy about, who you go see, especially it was kind of like an emergency too. And so I ended up with a couple of Caucasian men, right? OBGYNs. And so during my experience, as I remember just going through the whole process of this, I went in, did my little images and my, to let them take a look and see what was going on inside my body. They determined that I needed to go see a specialist. Like everything went really fast. And then I ended up in, the office and the care of a couple of surgeons, a couple of male OBGYN doctors who specialized in taking out, body parts for women. And I just remember it being so, it was so impersonal. And I remember being in the office because there's a pre-appointment that you need to agree and to, sign documents to contract the surgery. And I remember going to this pre-op appointment and I'm going thinking, okay, so I'm not sure, I'm still not sure if this is what I want to do. It's still on the table up in the air. And so I wanted to go and kind of have a discussion around the pros and cons and just kind of get a better feel. After all, this is not like, okay, I'm not just going to get a couple of stitches, and put a Band-Aid over it. No, there's like organs that they're proposing to take out of my body. And so I remember going into the office and it being so stifling cold, right? And I'm not talking about temperature, I'm talking about the energy. And so these two doctors, one would prescribe, the medicine for the surgery. The other one would actually do the surgery. And so when I went in and I began to ask questions, it was just so unwelcoming, informal. I just remember being so brushed off, right? Because when I was asking questions and letting him know, I wasn't really too sure. I'm just doing a little bit more due diligence to make sure that this is what I want to do. His response was, well, here's the paper. And he put the paper on the desk and just kind of walked out of the room. Like, let me know when you decide. I was like, wait a minute. Am I being punked? Like, where the camera at? Because I must be being punked. Like, I could not believe that something so important, right? I guess I understand too, because this was a specialist who he probably did this like every other day. This is like common, operation for him. But for the patients, what about the patients? Like, where's the empathy for the patients that are actually losing a part of themselves? Like, this was just totally just like, first of all, it was a wake-up call for me. And secondly, it brought back a lot of the memories of conversations that I had with my grandmother about, being able to care for ourselves and actually being pre, doing the things before things start falling apart, basically, is what we were always encouraged to do. Like, be ahead of the game. Don't wait for something to be falling apart and then try to go and fix it. But, take care of yourself. And so just a lot of things start coming back up. But I was just so outdone by that experience. Needless to say, I didn't end up allowing them to operate on me. I'm like, if you would do that to me, if you would treat me with such disregard, what would make you think that I would allow you to cut into my body and take out organs? Like, you must be kidding me. I know you lying. I don't think so. So I didn't end up getting the surgery. I ended up walking out. Right after he walked out, I walked out. I didn't even say goodbye or thank you. I just walked out with that same energy that he was giving me. And what I ended up doing was I said, okay, there must be, a better way. There must be an alternative, because I didn't want to do it anyway, but because I was in such discomfort. And, his words to me was, oh, if you don't do this, then it's going to turn into, something, they put the 10 on it. And so and then to come to find out, he's a specialist that does this. And so for every surgery, I'm sure there is I'm positive of it. Like for every surgery, there must be like a bonus that doctors get for being able to, do what they do. And so it's not a matter of sitting down and talking with patients that, and that you care, because that's what the Hippocratic Oath is. That means that you have taken, this oath that you will take care of people. Like, that's what you have vowed to do. It's not just about making money or seeing how many body parts you can take out so you can get the bonus, you know what I mean? But it felt very much like that. And come to find out that there is there are those that specialize in that, and it becomes like a business, just like everything else. It's just like everyday business. And so, but you would think that under the circumstances like that, they would understand that this is not just going to buy a loaf of bread and paying for it and thank you, have a good day. No, this is it's actually something very significant. It's very significant. And I'm sure, it's probably equivocal to having a child. You know how sometimes the woman will go into a after birth type of depression because she has kind of lost something. She carried this weight and this connection for 9 months, and now it has been taken out of her body. There's this sense of separation and release that happens. And so there is this transition that happens in her being, emotionally, spiritually, physically, and so there is a postpartum that takes place after that. And so I imagine that that's something similar. I don't know because I didn't do it, but being that you have lost a part of yourself, there has to be some type of partum, to that. But to think that this is something that would be so sacred, right? Something so sacred would be handled with more care and would be handled with more empathy and, with more caution. Like, I could not believe it. I couldn't believe it. I got out of there so fast. I was like, oh, you will never, ever, 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 ever get a chance to put your hands on me. Never. And so what ends up happening is I ended up looking for alternative ways of healing. And, just by coincidence, someone posted something about Dr. Sebi, and it resonated. And he wasn't even talking about that. It was something like just random that he was talking about, but it guided me to him. And so I began to listen, and I began to follow, the teachings, and it ended up turning my whole eating regimen around, and my whole life. Like, it changed the way that I thought, just period, overall. And so I ended up changing my lifestyle because, we eats over here. We cooks and we eats over here. Okay. We talking about tables, like just tables full of food. Grandma would get down. Grandma didn't play. Grandma could get in that kitchen early in the morning. By evening time, we have a whole table full of food, right? It was like a ritual that we had, right? Our ritual was around food. And it probably still is for a lot of us. But my love for food, which I still love food, but I just, the older you get, you understand that you have to start making better choices if you want to be around to see your grandbabies and you just have to make better choices. And so I ended up changing my diet. And so I went on, it was like for a whole year. I would not go to the store to buy anything. I went straight. Well, it took a while. One of the things that I absolutely love is cheese, right? Just give me some cheese and we're good. I can make a whole meal. Just give me a block of cheese. And so the meat wasn't so bad. The meat I could let go really easily. I didn't really trip off the meat, but it was the cheese. That was the last thing to go. Um, and so, but over time, I released everything and I was eating nothing but homemade meals. Like I wasn't going out. I was eating lots of vegetables. I wasn't even eating lots of fruits. It was just mostly vegetables. And whenever I had like bread or some type of wrap, right, I would actually make it myself from, ancient grains. And so I had a very holistic diet and I didn't eat out. I went to Whole Food stores to buy my spices and um, my herbs and my grains, and so I went for a whole year. I was like pretty hardcore Savy diet, and I wasn't really going by what Savy. I know he has like books and stuff. It really wasn't so much of going by his regimen, but I stayed away from things that I knew was not good for me, like white bread or anything made with flour or sugar or high content corn syrup, all of that stuff that is hidden in everything. And I ate a lot of vegetables, lots of mushrooms. I still love mushrooms. Lots of chickpeas. I ate lots of, like I said, vegetables, broccoli, just getting tomatoes, just getting really, crafty. It got to the point where more than the taste, because really we can make anything taste good. It's not even the food that we love. It's really the seasonings, right? If you give somebody a piece of chicken and you don't season it, they're not going to want the chicken. It's really the seasonings. In that same way, if you take a piece of broccoli and you season that thing like it's a piece of chicken, listen, we going somewhere here. We got us a meal. And so I did that for about a year, just hardcore. No meat, no cheese, no bread, just everything that American food culture it binges around, right? I fasted for like a year. Oh my goodness, y'all, you talking about feeling like you were back in your early 20s. And I think I was like in my early, I was like in my early 40s during this time, because this is like maybe about 8 years ago. And so, but you talking about at the end of the day, not sleepless nights, but just having so much energy. Like at the end of the day, you feel like you're climbing up walls, right? And so what happened was we don't eat enough. And it was like I couldn't eat enough. Like, it's not the fact that we have to starve ourselves. We don't. Like, we can eat all the right foods and we can eat as much of the right foods as we want. And the more you eat, the more, your body responds beautifully to it. But you can only eat so much, right, of the right foods. Like you could eat a salad or just some steamed broccoli, and like an hour later, your body just burns that off real quick. But I couldn't get enough calories in, right? And so what I ended up having to do is I ended up having to look into like some natural herbal supplements made of herbs. And by the end of the day, y'all, I was like running up walls. And so, but this was such a beautiful, beautiful experience that just really turned my life around. And next thing I knew, everything was good. I no longer had those issues down in my womb. My body healed itself, right? And so I chose the alternate route of medicine, and I did the research, to find out what I should be eating, what was causing the issue, right? And I did the work. I did what I needed to do to heal myself so that I did not have to depend on someone else to tell me, right, what I need for my body, which was absolutely not what they were suggesting. Absolutely not. And so I say that to say that this is why so many, especially Black women, are looking to ways to implement self healing or to implement other healing modalities besides this. And I'm going to call it Western medicine because that's what it is. It's almost like microwave medicine, right? Instead of dealing with the issue, they peddle pills and they just give prescriptions, and by the time you end up dealing with the actual symptom, right, you're taking 5 or 6, if not more, other medicines just to deal with the one medicine, to deal with the issue that you're having. Like, and it's all a money game. We found that out, right? The industries are all interconnected. And that's another thing that I learned, how we have these different pillars that are interconnected. When we look at, the food chain, all of those things that cause sickness in my body are things that they would say. You guys remember that triangle, the food pyramid that tells you like what you need every day? Like some of that stuff on there is toxic. And I would venture to say even more than some, most of it is toxic to our bodies. And it's very interesting how even after finding out how something is toxic, how they would continue to uplift it and prop it up like it's still good. I'll never forget that commercial that used to come on, milk. It does a body good, right? Until you find out what milk really is. Right. Now we have all of these whistleblower documentaries that go behind the scene to let us know what's really going on. And so it's like this, this huge wake up call for me. And I began to look around and see. It was almost like, I don't know, it was crazy. I think that may have been like where my awakening began, because I began to see things like so different. And one of the things that I learned with the food is that we have a very highly acidic diet. And one of the things that I learned is not that, acid is bad, but anything out of balance is bad and it's toxic. And, when you have a diet that just promotes acid, everything, of course you're going to have a breakdown in the body because it can only take so much. And then by the time we get into our older years, our 40s and our 50s, like our body can't sustain the lifestyle anymore of whatever toxicities we've developed for the first 30 years. And so, but I learned all of this and I looked around and I had to study and I had to like really figure out the best route to heal myself. Because I found that I couldn't depend on nobody else to do it. Like I had to do this myself. And so that's when I began to get into like, herbs and roots. I began to get into herbs and roots and, learning different ways. There's like food that I have never heard of until I passed like my 40s. Like kale. Where has kale been? I did never even know what kale was. I never heard of kale until I was like in my late 40s. And so it just speaks to the culture that we're raised in and how sometimes things are set up a certain way, And so when you look at the food diet that we're given, and then we look at the medical industry and how it treats symptoms and not the actual cause of the symptoms, just to keep you coming back to, keep the prescriptions going, and then you look at these particular physicians who are, they are put in position to do this thing. In this case, this is like take out as many, body parts as they can, as many wombs as they can, right? That's what they do. And they get bonuses to do it. So it becomes not a method of care, but more like a business. It's a business, right? And so you begin to look at all these different ways that society is operating. And sometimes it's a lot when you begin to see things for what they are. But that was my experience with the medical industry. I do still, I have medical care, but now I'm very specific with who I go to. I kind of, was very adamant about who's going to care for my body. And so I ended up connecting with this young Black woman doctor. Amazing, amazing. I'm even to the point where I don't even want nobody else touching me if you're not a woman and if you're not Black, right? It's just my preference, right? I feel like for someone who is feminine and of color, at this point, I need someone who can relate. I need someone who can look at me and understand the value of who they have before them. Someone who's going to treat me like they mama and they grandmama with that type of care and that type of respect. That's why I say that. And so I currently do have, someone who she's a young Black doctor, amazing. And my first time going to see her, I just was smiling. I was smiling. First of all, I was proud. I was like, you go, girl. I love this. I love this. And my first time when I met her, I was like, it is good to see your face. She was like, oh, okay, it's good to see your face too. My name is Doctor, and so it was just a really good experience. It was a good experience. And I still have her, and so whenever I have issues, that's where I go. And I feel like we need to really be more, because there are some things, there's only so much I think that we can provide for ourselves. There's some things that we may need to, take advantage of the medical institution's resources for. Like when we go in to do our yearly exams, like, we need to do that just to keep up with what's going on with our bodies. But we can also still and yet be choosy about who we allow to handle us. Okay. And if it doesn't feel right, if it don't feel right in your spirit, listen, go find someone else, okay? Because this is your life we're talking about. This is your livelihood that we're talking about, right? You only have one body, okay? And so this is what was brought up for me, just a lot of interesting feelings around my past, my history with the medical industry as well. And I feel like it needs to be said. We need to talk about it more, our experiences, so that people will know that there are other options. There are other options. You don't have to allow them to just, and it's not that that has to be your choice. You don't have to choose the route that I took. You can definitely do it, but don't let them tell you what's good for you. You tell you what's good for you. Only you know that. And I think that's what I learned in this situation, is that sometimes if we're not careful, we can put so much trust into these institutions that they don't mess with us like that. Honestly, they don't. And this is proof of that. The fact of, what's happening with this woman. And so I want to talk about it first of all, for my daughters and the people in my family, the next generation coming up behind me, so that you will know, and so that you will understand the power that you hold when it comes to things like this, when we're dealing with the medical industry, and the value of what you have too. The value of what you have. Now, when I started this, I didn't know it was spiritual when I was starting, but our bodies are very sacred, are very spiritual. And when I began to really understand that, it changed a lot of things with how I not only look at myself, how I deal with myself, how I treat my body. Um, and so one of the things that happened with this spiritual journey that started is I began to seek more because my eyes were opened, and I began to become hungry spiritually. And so it led me kind of down a rabbit hole, right? One thing led to another. And this is how I ended up here, right? Where I am today. Just little things, little nudges and little drawings that pulled me in through my experiences. And so what ended up happening is when I reached the point where I ended up having this full-fledged spiritual awakening. One of the things that I ran into was a book, and this book was called The Sacred Woman. I'm sure many of you all have heard of it, and it just really hones in on the fact of understanding what it is that we have as women and how sacred it is, and how there's no substitute for it anywhere in the world, right? And knowing that, how we are charged with the responsibility, right, to care for it and to nurture it. And for many of us, to heal it, right? To heal it. And so doing this, it was almost like what would I call it? Kind of like an initiation, I guess I would call it. There is a lot that I learned about this. And some of the things that were talked about were things like the womb having a language of her own, and how it sings very warmly and moans and speaks like when it's in pain, and when it is in pain, sometimes that's when we have like growths, unnatural growths like tumors or fibroids. That's the common thing that a lot of women are dealing with in this common time, and it has a lot to do with what we're putting in our bodies. And so the womb will speak out, when it's in pain, sometimes in the form of some type of growth or mutation. That's the womb speaking, right? And when the womb speaks of things like pleasure and interaction, right, we have things like a nurturing that takes place with our mate. That's where love grows as well. The womb sometimes says yes, right? Sometimes it says no. And when the womb exalts, babies are born. When the womb yells and screams, that's where we may experience things like blood clots. And so we can listen closely to our womb, and we can learn our womb's language. We can heed the message, and we can let our sacred womb live, right? I had an interesting experience here, maybe like a month ago or so, maybe the beginning of April. I went out to brunch with a couple of my loved ones. And at brunch, I sometimes will get like a mimosa or some type of, nice little spritzy something, and I can't remember what I got, but it was something. And I hadn't drank for a while because I had been being called to move away from alcohol for a long time now. And so I just cut back on a lot of different things that, I dibble and dabble in from time to time. But lately, drinking has not been, I haven't really had a desire or a craving. It just has not been, desirable for me. And so this particular day, I was like, yeah, let me just have something, little something, something. And I kid you not, the rest of that day, as I'm going through my day, all the way through the next day, I literally felt like my womb was drunk. That's what it felt like. It felt very heavy and almost like hung over, right? And it just was very uncomfortable. Girl ain't picked up not a bottle of nothing since. I actually got a beautiful, expensive bottle of wine for Mother's Day for my children. I ain't touched it yet. It's still sitting up there on my pantry shelf because I don't know. My womb talked to me after that and let me know, like, yeah, no, that's not, that is not, something that is adding to life for us right now. And so our womb conversates with us and she talks, and it's up to us to listen. And so that little excerpt I read from Sacred Woman, it's a guide to healing the feminine body, mind, and spirit. Some of you guys may have this beautiful book. If you don't have it, go get it. It is by Queen Afua. I had a chance to actually see her when I went to Atlanta about a year ago. She was there. She was like a guest speaker there. Amazing, amazing woman. And so, and I love the fact that she has taken on this charge to heal the women and to awaken us to what it is that we have. There's another part in the book that talks about the womb as the spiritual center for the woman. It is actually the sacred center for the woman, the physical womb, or some would call it the uterus. It's located, right? We all know where it is. It's down in the pelvic area, and it's covered or sheltered by ovaries and our fallopian tubes. And this is one of the, or if I can say the most sacred feminine organ that we have. It's the reproductive organ, right? It's hollow, it's pear-shaped, and it lies on top of our bladder. And so this is the most sacred organ that we have in our bodies. And this is the thing that houses, it's actually the portal of life, right? It's the portal of life. And we have been given this gift to emulate creation, right? We've been given this gift. And that's why I appreciate Queen Afua, because she has this revelation and she took it upon herself to embellish that and make it her mission to awaken women. Somewhere along the line, maybe we forgot a little bit about what it is that we have under the circumstances, right? When we think about all that we've gone through, sometimes it's easy to forget the sacredness of life, but it's incumbent upon us who are awakened to that again to awaken others and take on that mission to enlighten others about that. And I think that's really has been her mission, which is so beautiful. I appreciate that. But she really inspires for us to embark upon the gift that we've been given, and the fact that we have this sacred portal, right, that we've been given to care for and to heal for most of us. Because there's a lot of things that can happen, that can cause damage to the womb. Things like trauma, sexual trauma. Sometimes it's, having abortions, sometimes it's, having some type of fibroid, something that invades down there because the pain is showing up in our wombs, right? Tumor growths, fibroids. Sometimes it's things like infections, sometimes we have, PMS, this heavy, monstrous bleeding. And, it's just so much that happens to show that there's trauma. And to have someone that understands that it's not just something to take care of, like, oh, just go, pop a couple of pills and go on about your way. But no, there's something a little bit deeper that's happening there. This particular energy center is our sacral chakra energy center. And of course, we know there's 7 basic subtle energy centers in our body. And this is the second center, representing all aspects of procreation, right? Inspired procreation. And the sacral chakra is, again, that thing that we have that helps us to be able to emulate creation. They call it the creative center. They also call it the pleasure center, right? It's multifunctional. And this chakra is where as women, a lot of our trauma can stem from this area. And so to know and to be aware and to acknowledge it as sacred, right, can totally change, I feel like, how we relate to our bodies. Sometimes it's just good to go and sit on the floor and feel your body, talk to your body, feel your heartbeat, thumping through every area of your body. Allow yourself to really sink down into your body, especially If things feel hectic, like that's a quick way to come back into your body and to regain, you know, access to the calmness that we all are able to usher in. That's a quick way to do that. But it's also good to sit down and feel your womb. Just tune into, relax a moment or two, and just feel our womb. When we think about this part of our body, right? She talked a lot about I want to remember, comedic. I believe she talked a lot in comedic terms and comedic, you know, symbolic, comedic names. I think the comedic name for the womb is Arit. And when we talk about it from a comedic point of view, that means that it's governed by the moon and the ocean, right? And the tides representing the elements of the water. Um, and so we're talking about emotional energy. We're talking about even our intuitive aspects, right? It's coming from the womb, right? Not just here, but there's a part of our intuitive connection and our intuitive abilities to connect with that part of ourselves that actually comes from the womb. This is the sacred center for woman. And so in Kemetic, it's referred to as the Arit. When we take a look at different rituals and healings and teachings that's in this book, it's amazing. Like all of the things that she has studied and compiled information and created this book. There's even it's pretty thick if you look, right? It goes into all kinds of things, not just wombs, but it actually helps us to stem and connect to every other area of our life too. Um, Even stepping into your calling, right? Even relating to others when it comes to our connections, when it comes to empowering ourselves to show up in the world, right? There's so much that happens and stems from needing to connect with this very sacred center that we hold as women. This is really something that I wanted to open up and talk to you about. And so this is what this brought up for me as I listened to, I think his name is Deontay, talk about what's happening, you know, with this young lady and how upsetting I get when I think of that. How upsetting I get when I think of that. Because again, this is another way, you know, for us to be stripped of this sacred possession that we have, that we've been given when it comes to dealing with the medical industry. And this is why I do believe like a lot of us are searching for other methods to find ways to care for ourselves, to take on more of the weight of caring for ourselves. Of course, there will still be things that we can't do, like when we need our yearly exams because we have the technology to do that kind of thing. But there are things that we can do, like we can be very preventative, right? And so if we know eating fried chicken is not necessarily good 7 days a week, right? If we know drinking Kool-Aid, you know, is not really, it's not really going to, you know, do our body any justice, especially as we get older. I feel like the older we get, the less tolerant our bodies are. It's like, okay, I done had enough. It's time to stop this now, right? Our bodies will talk to us, just like our wombs will too. And so I think that's why a lot of us are starting to prescribe different methods of holistic healing for ourselves. And we're looking for other options because it's just not getting it no more. I was done, right? If it wasn't for certain things that I can't do myself, like those yearly exams, like I really don't see a need to go and see, you know, anyone. But it's because of those things that we do need to take the opportunity to stay up on what's going on with our bodies. But there's a lot that we can take responsibility for with our bodies. And so very interesting discussion that was had. I thought it sparked some very good points. And that was just one thing. Like there was like so many good points that he made in this discussion. And so I'm going to post the video below so you can go and you can watch it if you choose to. And so, yeah, let me know what you think. If you listen, if you've had an experience like this, let me know what you think. If you want information on this Sacred Woman book, let me know. I'll definitely send you, I'll post that below as well. That's what I'll do. So you can take a look at where I sourced this information from. That's been coming up. I've been hearing Spirit say, okay, you need to start sourcing your sources. Okay, don't just get on here like you just, professor, source it. It's okay. Just source it, and so I'm gonna put that in there so you can take a look at that as well. But that's what I wanted to come and talk to you all about. Maybe this will help somebody. I don't know. Maybe it's something that you may want to listen to and just keep in the back of your mind for later, right? Overstand what I'm saying. Don't minimize it. The day will come where we will all have some type of encounter, I do believe, with our medical industry, where we'll need to make a decision based on our values and what is right for us, right? Because a lot of these ailments that we're experiencing don't need a prescription. What we need is a lifestyle change, right? Sometimes. Now, I'm not saying get off your medicine, but I'm saying if we're able to be preventative and make better decisions, young people, before you get old, right? Before you get old, make those changes. And as parents, if we're able to change the way that we eat, right? And so that we cultivate certain palates for our kids, right? That won't just be junk food and fried foods, but create all different kinds of varieties of palates that they're used to, then they'll be more apt to choose better when they have the opportunity to do it for themselves. And so just whatever you take away from this video, it's just general information. I know I was all over the place, but I felt the need to talk about this tonight. And yeah. And for those of you that are prayers, meditators, send good energy to this family of this young woman whose son, is very much still in this situation, where they're being researched or whatever they're doing. I don't know what they're doing exactly, but I don't know how I feel about it. It upsets me. And so, but we need to be aware. We need to be educated as much as we can. We need to be, curious about these things. Yeah, it's okay to ask questions. And sometimes that will let you know where you stand with people, right? When you start to ask questions or you pull back and you're like, wait, I have a question, right? The fact that the doctor didn't even have time for her to answer my questions, what makes you think that I would allow you to cut on me? I don't think so. Find another dummy. Okay. But anyway, that's what I have. I just want to come and have just very general, open conversation. I hope you guys are well tonight. And I pray and I'm sending good energy, hoping that the week ends on a good note. This has been such a beautiful week. And there's a lot of things that it's been transitioning, I think, for a lot of us. It's just in the energy. So for some, it could have been a heavy week. It could have been a difficult week. A lot of things we're learning right now about ourselves, maybe even about others. It's just a interesting time to be alive as you look around and see what's going on in the world. Make sure you don't get caught up in the weight of it, but take care of yourself. Do what you need to do to stay grounded and stay balanced as much as possible through these changes. But I'm sending good energy your way. I hope you all are well. Okay. Thank you so much for stopping by and listening. Let me know what you think about this. And if you've had experiences kind of similar to that, feel free to share. Okay. Open forum. This is a safe space, right? If you comment, we're going to be respectful for everybody's comments, okay? And so, all right, I'm going to get off of here. You guys have a wonderful day. Take a look at that video. Awesome podcast. Also, if you're interested in the book, take a look at the link here as well, too, okay? All right, you guys. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.